Okay. So what is a failover? Failover is when your primary database is completely lost. When there is a failover, standby is converted into primary, but primary is not converted into standby as it is already lost. When your primary server is crashed, how would you convert it into standby? You just cannot connect to the server itself. If you do not have flashback enabled on primary, you must recreate primary from scratch using RMAN duplicate method. Now this is the very important point which I was telling you guys earlier, that I'll discuss about the importance of flashback in failover. Let's take you do not enable the flashback, right? So what happens is when you rebuild the primary, because you lost the primary, transactions will continue on standby. The new transactions which are happening on the standby, you need to get all those transactions onto the primary, right? So if flashback is enabled, you can flashback your primary database back to the crash time and then start applying the logs from the new primary. So that's why flashback is very important. If you do not enable flashback, then you will have to build the primary from scratch. Now the next lesson that we have is rebuilding primary after failover. So in our case, we have enabled the flashback and we'll be looking at how to rebuild the primary database after failover has happened, right? So we'll be using the same technique. We'll use the flashback database to rebuild the primary. If flashback is not enabled, then you need to follow the entire documents again as to how we create the physical standby. Like delete all the control file data files from the original primary, clone the your activated primary, that is standby. Then you will have to clone from that server the new primary, build the primary server, and then perform a switchover. Pretty confusing, but this is how it works. In our case, we have already enabled flashback on both primary and standby. As I already told you, flashback needs to be enabled on both, but the only problem in real time is you will have flashback logs generated. When the flashback logs are generated, you need to have another management area or another area like archive log destination. You will have to manage the logs and the space. That is one little overhead over there, but that's okay. And to be very frank, no production environment will have flashback enabled because you do not see failovers so frequently. Like I myself have never seen a failover. You don't see servers crashing just like in normal situations. So your servers definitely continue normally, but it does not mean that you are not prepared for the worst case. It's your job to be prepared for crashes. Note, in our earlier activity, we had performed switchover. Current state of your servers should be in this switchover. Earlier we activated the proddb underscore sts primary and proddb was our physical standby, but later on we have reverted back the roles. So let us connect to our server and check the database roles. So I'm connected to the primary. Okay, proddb is up and running. We'll take another session. SSH-x root @192.168.0.222. Perfect. This is the DR server. So on DR, we'll check the database instance that is running. We have proddb underscore st already running over there. Great. So we'll switch to Oracle user, SQL plus /ss dba, and on the primary, switch user -oracle, clear, scale plus slash access DBA, select name comma open underscore mode comma database underscore role from v dollar database. This is the primary database and this should be the physical standby. Now by looking at this one, we cannot guarantee whether the MRP is running or not. So let us check whether MRP is already up and running or not. So select process status sequence number from v dollar managed standby. Great, MRP is up and running. It is applying log number 146, archive log list, and the current log sequence number is 146. Perfect. Our data guard is in sync and this is the current status of our servers. Now our goal is to crash the primary prod DB. In order to simulate failure, we will shut down the primary server prod DB as root user shut down the server without shutting down the DB. So what we are doing is we are crashing the primary database. So how are we crashing? With root user will just shut down the server directly. Okay, and after shutting down, we'll execute the query on the client so that we'll see from where we are getting the output, right? So let me open a third window which will act as our client. So this green text is our client. Okay, so switch user Oracle scale plus sys slash sys at the rate prod db as sys dba. Now on the client, we'll execute the same query and we'll see where exactly we are connected to. So we need to have the DB unique name as well. DB unique name from v dollar database, right? Okay, so we have both client and our data guard setup over there. Right now over the client, we are getting the output from original primary, that is prod DB. Perfect. So let us crash the primary, that is prod DB. So with root user, I will directly shut down the server. Our primary is already up and running and I'm just shutting down the server because we cannot simulate a crash or something. So let us bluntly shut down the server. So this server is down and on primary, on the client, I will run the query. So it is hanging now. Now to minimize the data loss, if you can mount the primary database, then flush the logs to standby. But in our case, our primary is not at all accessible. So we can't even flush the redo entries to the standby. Sometimes what happens is, let's take somebody shut down the server. Then what you can do is you can bring up the server, mount the database, and then flush the logs. But generally, crash is a crash. You cannot mount it. But still I have included this point. In our case, we are going to ignore this one because we cannot mount the database. Our primary is completely down. So next, if you are not able to mount the database, then check if primary server is up. Again, primary is not at all up, right? In that case, manually copy archive logs from primary to standby and register those logs on standby database. So this is an exceptional case if you can really mount the primary server, or if you cannot mount, you can only open the primary server, then copy the logs manually. Next, check for redo gaps. We have bluntly already shut down the primary, so okay, now this will have a problem because we connected to this one using that putty session. So what I'll do is, if you remember the DR, we first connected to primary, then we did a SSH to the DR server. So what I will do is, we'll close this one. We'll take another putty session. I'll rather take a completely new one. RMAN catalog, this should be up. Okay, and then DR server. Okay, this is not working. No problem. We'll take this one. So with the client, I am doing an SSH to the DR server. So don't get confused. SSH -x root @ 192.168.0.12222. Root @123. So we are onto the DR server. ps-ef grep pmon. This is protdb_st. So what we need to do next is we need to check for gaps. So we'll switch to Oracle user, scale plus /ssdba. So it says there are no gaps and definitely our data guard was in sync. Perfect. Start the failover. We need to activate standby so that client can continue to access even after the failover. So on the standby, we need to execute this command: alter database recover manage standby database cancel. First, we are cancelling the MRP process because our MRP is running in the background, right? So we have to cancel the MRP process. Then alter database recover manage standby database finish. We are saying that, okay boss, you have done lot of log apply, so now finish it, just complete. So execute this one. And next, select switchover status from $V database. We can check the switchover status and you must see that it is to primary. Now you must see to primary or sessions active, switch standby to primary. This command alter database commit to switchover to primary with session shutdown will switch your standby to primary role. Database is altered. And then we have to open the database. So our original primary is crashed. It is shut down. On the standby, we have activated it to primary and now we are opening the database. Perfect, database is open. Now we'll move on to the client. Okay, already timeout is done. I'll reconnect and I'll re-execute the same command. Select name, open mode, database role, DB unique name. So from where you should get the output? On the standby. We can see the DB unique name is protdb_st. That means we have successfully activated the standby when our primary got crashed. This is how we activate the standby. But now the problem is, let's take the client continues to execute some transactions. Okay, so create table test SNO number comma student name varchar 210. I'm just creating a dummy table. Okay, so insert into test values 1 comma then Mukesh, and I'm reinserting the same records and I'm committing the transaction. At this stage we are in a separate situation. Now what is this situation? Let me just talk about it. Primary is completely gone. Primary is crashed. We have activated the standby. So the earlier standby is now primary. Correct? The client is right now connected to the new primary. That is also fine. So let us assume the archive log number that was running before the crash happened was 50. And on the standby, we had activated the standby when the log sequence number was 50. Also, we have executed some transactions. So definitely multiple logs would have been generated, right? Something like that. So if I power on this server, in our case we only did a shutdown. Okay, let us assume we even try to power on, then how can I apply these logs over here? Manually you can't do it. We can't do it manually, like you cannot perform a normal recovery. Those all things will take lot of time. I mean, you will have to register logs, you will have to apply them using RMAN. It will take a lot of time. So what is the best method? See, the simplest method, logically, if you think, the current database is in primary, right? This is the primary. So if I start this database, I can make it standby, correct? So what I'll do is when I start this database, I will flashback the database till the point when it was crashed. So the crash point, I'll flashback, then I'll change the database role to standby and enable MRP. When I do so, what happens is the logs will flow in the reverse direction, and automatically the log which is required like 51, 52, 53, they will be applied reversely back to the original primary, which is currently the standby. So that is the logic we are using. Rather than manually copying the logs and doing all those things, not needed, we are automating the process. So in a data guard environment, we can have only one primary. So when you activate the original standby as primary, the crashed primary can be opened as a standby. So once you open it as a standby, enable the MRP. MRP will automatically take care of all the logs. It will fetch the logs from the new primary and apply all those logs 51, 52, and automatically your new standby will become in sync with the new primary. So once the sync is done, the servers will look like this. This will be your standby and this will be your primary, right? What we can do is once both the servers are in sync, we can perform a switchover. So standby becomes primary and primary becomes standby. That way we'll get back the original configuration and logs will flow from left to right. So this is prod db and this is prod db underscore st. So this is how we are going to recover the original crashed primary. Okay, so we have ran some transactions and these transactions are recorded onto the current primary, which was earlier our standby. Okay, so next is rebuilding primary after failover. We have seen a failover. So how do we rebuild the primary after the failover? Now there are two methods. Method one is rebuild from scratch. We need to use the same method like RMAN duplicate method, how we have used initially to create the physical standby, right? Then method two is flashback the database only if flashback was enabled. If you did not enable the flashback, you cannot use this method. And this is the reason I was stressing earlier, like it is important for you guys to enable flashback. Note, in our earlier activity, we have performed failover. Current state of your servers should be proddb is crashed, we shut down the server, and proddb underscore st is right now current primary. This is our setup, right? Next, what we need to do is we need to get the SCN at which standby became primary. Now, your base tables, like inside your database, we have a column called as standby became primary SCN under $database. We need to get this SCN number because we will flash back the database till this SCN, right? When the standby was activated as primary, till that SCN will flash back the primary database. So what I'll do is, when I say primary, it is the crashed primary, okay? So this is the crashed primary where we shut it down. Let me bring up the server first. It is showing that server is still up and running. Okay, so we'll have to shut down. There's no proper shutdown yet. So now I'll start it up. Okay, so system is up. Our crashed primary server has been started. Now we'll connect to the server and we'll switch to Oracle user. First, what we need to do is we need to get the SCN number till where we need to flash back the primary. So you need to run this query onto the current activated primary. So this is the database which is right now open, and this is the SCN number when this standby was converted to primary. So we need to make a note of this SCN number. Right. Now flashback crashed primary, that is prod_db. Start the prod_db server. We have already done that. Mount the database and flashback prod_db to SCN from the last step. So let us check the databases. Grep pmon. So we'll wait for ASM to come up. It will take some time for ASM to come up. So it's taking some time. If you see that ASM is not up after like 10-15 minutes, then you will have to investigate why it did not come up. So right now we have the ASM up and running. Perfect. So SQL plus /SSDBA startup mount. Okay. The Oracle restart utility is trying to start the database. As I said earlier, when you are using the grid infrastructure like ASM, the ASM or SRVCTL utility will automatically start your database. So what you need to do is, in this case, shut down the database, because it makes no sense if this database is up and running. Already your current primary is ahead of this database.
It's a shut down or a shut? Sorry about it. Oh, hello.
Yeah, tell me.
It is shut down immediately or a shut immediately? Immediate.
Both will work.
Oh, both will work. Okay. Sorry. Are you a little bit faster today, like than other time?
Why you feel
I don't know. Maybe
so?
I cannot feel that way, but it is possible that my brain is slow today. I don't know.
Okay. No, I'm at the same pace.
Same pace.
Yeah. So there seems to be an issue with the database. Okay, SQL plus /SSDBA startup mount. This is one small issue with the Oracle, the grid infrastructure SRVCTL utility. It conflicts with you trying to start and stop the database. But any which ways, once you have mounted the primary database, see, you need to shut down the database, startup mount, and then flashback the database to SCN number. What is the SCN number? We have already copied. This is the SCN number. We have to flashback the database. Flashback completed. Now convert the crash primary to physical standby. Nothing but the prod_db, as I mentioned earlier, the best way is to convert it to a physical standby. Start the MRP. Automatically it will get the logs from the new primary and apply it over here. So alter database, convert to physical standby. This is the command. So these all commands we are running on the crashed primary, the original primary, okay, prod_db. Now we are shutting down again. We'll start in the mount state and enable the MRP. So meanwhile, what I'll do is I'll perform some log switches onto the current primary. Alter system switch log file. Perfect. So startup mount and then alter database recover manage standby database disconnect. This will enable the MRP process. So once MRP is enabled, it will automatically fetch all the logs from the new primary. Select process status sequence number from $v managed standby. Okay. Now we can see that RFS process is not coming up over here, which means we need to see the log archive destination 2 on the standby. So show parameter test2, show parameter state underscore 2. Okay, state 2 is enabled. So which means we need to wait for RFS to start. Yes. Now RFS is started. And you can see the log number it is applying is 7. So can anyone tell me how come the log number is 7? I mean it is lower than our earlier log numbers which were 141, 142, 146 log numbers. Why are we seeing log numbers like 7, 10? Anyone? Any idea? This is very important interview question. When you perform a failover, your database goes into a new incarnation. This is a very important interview question. Whenever there is a failover, database gets into a new incarnation, log sequence is reset. So that's why the log sequence again started with 1 and the current log sequence is going on is 7. So how can we see it? I'll exit RMAN target slash show list incarnation. We can see the current incarnation and the date and time is current date and time as per my system. So just now we performed the failover, right? So whenever you perform the failover, your database gets into a new incarnation. I mean, whenever you try to recover the database out of the failover, it gets into a new incarnation. Log sequence is reset and it is always mandatory that you take a backup whenever there is a new incarnation. So the current state of your databases should be the prod_db is converted to physical standby and prod_db underscore st continues to be primary. Now what we can do is revert to the original configuration. At this stage, if you would like to revert the current state of databases to original, you can perform a manual switchover like our earlier activity that we have seen. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and perform a manual switchover so that we'll get back the original state of our databases. So where is the switchover document? This is the switchover. So I'll try to perform it pretty quickly. Connect to prod_db database. Okay, I'm not connecting to client. I'm just performing this switchover. So I'll even leave the gaps and all. I'll just convert the primary to standby. This is the.
One second. That can we get the documents?
Yeah. After the session, I'll send it. Yeah, I have written it. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for reminding.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
No problem. Yeah. So on the current primary, sessions active, we can still go ahead, alter database commit to switchover physical standby, converting the current primary to standby. And then mount the database. Now we'll convert the standby to primary. So these things will confuse you a little bit, but once you practice them. It will be easy. So the original primary is ready to be converted. I'm converting it into the primary database, and I'll just open the database. And on the original standby, I will activate the MRP process. Okay, so this is the current status. What I have done, I have reverted back. I have executed all the steps on the correct primary and standby. So database is open. On the client, what I'll do is I'll check where are we connected right now. See, we are connected to the ProdDB. If you look at this session, right now we have performed failover and switchover both in one activity. Still the session is active. Earlier we got the output from ProdDB_ST. Right now we got the output from ProdDB. So this is how your clients will still continue to, be connected to the DataGuard environment. So guys, if you have any doubts, let me know. We have just now seen the failover process, and also we have seen the switchover once again after failover. Okay, so if nothing, we'll proceed further. The next topic that we have is RMAN in DataGuard configuration. How should you configure your RMAN when you're working with DataGuard environment? So it's very simple. I have few queries and few suggestions over here. So first we'll look at these suggestions, and later on I have an assignment for you guys, and this assignment needs to be executed by you on your setup, the DataGuard setup. So I'll talk about this assignment later. First let us understand about the RMAN configuration. RMAN in DataGuard configuration works very normal like single standalone database. But there are few important things you should know in order to define your backup and recovery strategy when using DataGuard. First of all, you need not register the standby with the catalog. RMAN will identify it as standby. We will only register the primary database with the catalog. Automatically standby will also get registered. Again, this is an interview question where interviewer can ask you like, how do you register a standby database to catalog? You'll have to say that we do not register the standby database to catalog. When we register the primary, RMAN automatically picks up the standby database. Next, catalog is a must. We already know why catalog is very important, so I won't talk about it. Backup control file on primary. You must still back up the control file on the primary. Let us assume you can, in a DataGuard environment, you can offload the backups onto the standby. You can do that because your databases are block by block same in a physical standby configuration. But even though you offload the backups onto the standby, still you must take the backup of control file on the primary because control file is very important. And as I mentioned earlier, in a DataGuard environment, your primary and standby control files are different. So you need to have that primary control file backup. On a standby system, you cannot back up the primary control file, right? So it is always good to still backup control file on primary if you plan to offload backups onto the standby. On standby, the control file is a standby control file. In case of primary crash, you cannot use standby control file. So at least backup control file and SP file on the primary. So what we'll do is we'll configure the control file auto backup on. Basically you do it on both the servers, not really on primary or standby. So RMAN target / configure control file auto backup on, and the same thing I will execute onto the standby. RMAN target / perfect. Next, set proper retention policy. This will not delete backups for the specified recovery window. Depending on your environment, you'll have to configure the retention policy. So in this case, we are going with 7 days. You might have a different retention policy based on your Okay, we cannot execute this command in the standby server because this is a standby control file, and the standby control file will not take this parameter. So just leave it. You need to execute only onto the primary. Next, you can backup archive logs on both primary and standby. This will provide you archive logs redundancy but not recommended. Now what you can do is you can have archive log backups on primary also. You can have archive logs backups on standby also. But you don't need so many copies of archive logs. So better you try to backup archive logs only on the primary. Don't put the overhead of backing up archives again on standby. So this is good but not recommended. Now how do you register a primary database with catalog? This is very important step. Over here you will learn some new things. So let us register primary database with the catalog. Now what I need to do is I need to bring up the RCat database. Let me start the RCat database. I have a central catalog server. I'll just enable it. Okay, RMAN catalog. Let me start the server. Okay, so let us check if catalog is up and running. Okay, it's up. So let me just get the catalog details because we need to configure the TNS entries for the catalog server, right? So if config-a, the IP address is 200, catalog details, and let me switch to Oracle user, env grep aura scale plus /ssdba. Let us start up the RCat database. Don't worry, I'm just starting up the recovery catalog, and then we will register our data guard environment into this recovery catalog. Perfect. So recovery catalog is up and running. Let me do TNS ping RCat. TNS ping RCat. Okay. So I'll copy directly the TNS entry. Network admin TNS names.aura. This is the RCat TNS entry which we can use directly. So we'll have to place this entry on both the servers, not only on the primary. Place it on both the primary and standby. So go to the oracle_home/network admin. Open the TNS names.aura. Go to the end of the file. Copy the RCat TNS entry and put it over there. The same thing I'll do on the standby. We'll exit cd $oracle_home/network admin TNS names.aura, and let us paste the RCat. Okay, now TNS ping RCat, it's working fine. Okay, no listener, we did not start the listener. lsnrctl start listener. Perfect. Okay, RCat TNS ping is working. TNS ping RCat, it's working fine. Now once you have the recovery catalog on primary, we will register the database with the catalog. So we can use this, the RMAN connection string that will connect to my RCat database. In your case, you will have to check the user ID password for the RCAT database. You can see it is connected to ProdDB and it is also connected to the catalog, recovery catalog database. Now let me issue this command register database. 1 minute guys, let me run this command first. Okay, I'll tell you why I ran this command, because the same SIDs were earlier registered with the RMAN catalog. So that's why what we need to do is we need to delete these entries and register a fresh ProdDB and ProdDB_ST. So let us remove database from recovery catalog. Okay. We can do this one, delete backup, no, unregistered catalog only. Yeah, this is important. DB key from this one. Let us connect to catalog. RMAN underscore RC, RMAN underscore RC. We need to connect with the recovery catalog owner user, and then I'll just have to remove this one. We'll basically have to unregister this one. So give the DB key. You'll have to give this number. Done. So this is something which I ran onto the catalog. So we'll check again. Now there are no DB unique names in the catalog. So nothing is registered on the catalog. So we'll continue.